Hello, pool fans. This is a video of my research into the game called Billtrum. Billtrum is a game designed by GT, Mr. Thornton. I believe I'll be addressing him as Thornton in this video. Thornton, I'm pleased to share my thoughts with your game. I really enjoyed watching the videos and seeing you guys play, and appreciate the hard work you put into doing the graphics to keep the score. All right. So, for those who don't know, Billtrum is a game played by the International Billtrum Association. And they just had their first ever world championship. And they've posted frame 1 and 2, and I've had the chance to see those games and review the game. Now, my first thought was to give this game a try on my virtual pool table, which is the Chalky Sticks uh, online video game. And I was able to play it because, of course, there's only one cue ball that you strike. So I started to think how to adapt this game so that I could play on a typical pool table with 15 balls. So obviously, there's a pretty direct version which can be played with less balls than on a full snooker table, as they've done here. And so it plays quite well with a few less balls. I did start thinking of how to, modify the game really just for my personal taste, something that I would enjoy playing. But of course, I don't want to change the official Billtrum. And so I asked Thornton, Mr. Thornton, if I could make a so-called American version. And so I have done that. I've created my own little American version that I'll play. And coincidentally, it seems like um, Thornton, that you've already considered less balls on a smaller pool table. I got your message saying you have I think it's a 622. Is that correct? 422. Yeah, 422 version, and you also had the idea of doing the holes in a certain sequence, which I guess great minds think alike because I had that same idea myself. And so I'm gonna switch now to the my pool table here and show you the game as I guess we could call this the American version. I don't know how different it is um, from your version, but the first idea I had was to make it a 5-2-1 game. And so what I'm showing here is a 5-2-1. The reason behind the one is I thought it would be really good to end with one ball and one hole. Um, I know you're having some frustration with the time it takes to edit. So one thing I wanted to solve, or at least from the point of view of a spectator, it's always good if a spectator could follow along the game without too much effort. And well, if I could um, make positive suggestions on the game as it stands, or as it is in the videos you've made, it really is important to see the score. Because of course you would never know that the game was about to end unless you had the score in front of you, because there could be quite a lot of balls still on the table when one player wins. So one shortcoming I think is just the observability of the game without the score. And I think I've kind of solved that and have some suggestions here that I think will be beneficial. So so the first idea I had, let me just describe the game as I'm playing it personally, as I'm playing it, and we could call this the American version or not. It's all right, or just 5-2-1 Billtrum is perfectly fine. Okay, so the first idea I had was I think the first idea was it would be better to end with one ball in one certain hole. So for the audience, if they're watching, if they see a ball go in that hole, they know that's the winning shot and the game's over. So that was the first thought I had, was to make it somehow end with one ball. Um, well, maybe I should say the first thought was to do the holes in order, and that was another uh, criticism I have of the game as it stands. Is it seems like it's a very offensive game. Like you're always shooting to score, and your opponent is always shooting to score. And there's really no, I guess the way to say it is, there's no way to really defend in the game as it was played in the video, because all of the holes are open and there's so many balls on the table that you and there's always going to be so many shots or possibilities. So because of that, there's really no way to defend um, the other player from having a shot, and therefore the game reduces to simply an offensive game where everyone is, you shoot one, I shoot one, you shoot one, I shoot one. And so um, I guess what I'm trying to say, there's no way to defend, and there's kind of no way to really prevent your opponent from winning while catching up, especially if you get far behind. So that was my first thought, is to make it to where you perform the holes in order. And if I understood your comment, I think you had the exact same idea, to do them in 5, 2, 1 in the order that I've shown here. So that's a variation that I would definitely prefer to play. Now, that was, I said, that's the first thought. The second thought was to end on one ball, and I think that's a good idea too. So the I have one other thought I'll get to, but as far as observability, I have this idea that it's really not for the observer. Of course, for the players, it's important to keep score and know that the score is like 5-3 or 2-2 or whatever. But for the observer, they're not so much concerned what the score is early on in the game. They're watching to see who's ahead and who's going to win. And so I have the idea of, and this, by the way, would make it to where you wouldn't have to really edit your videos in post. You could just have something like a marker, or maybe my first thought was like a cup, like a solo cup or something upside down. And each player would just sort of mark what hole they're working on as they proceed through the game. So at the beginning of the game, it would be, when this player makes 5, he could move his puck cup to here. And when this player makes 5, he could move it here. And when he's working on the winning shot on the last hole, he can move it there. And that's purely for the spectator to observe and to follow along uh, in the game. Now, so that's what I have, these little balls here. And for the video game, I think I'll just sort of like put them in the hole, as I play, to know that I'm working on that hole. Um, so that's my thoughts on making your life easier and not having to to edit afterwards and keep the score so that people can watch the game. Um, Now, as I was playing the game, I started to realize, or even as I was watching your video, the best part of the game is going to be the end of the game, when they get down to um, and I am referring to uh, you know this video, when you get down to the end, like to where there's really 1 or 2 balls left. That's actually where the defensive gameplay can come into play, because the other player can play defensively and knock away easy balls from the other player from scoring. And so, realizing that, I wanted to make this variation so that um, it has an exciting finish. And I think the way to do that is to ensure a relatively even match up until this point. So it would be great if, the players 5-5 would be a great score because that would lead to this end game with 5 balls in which they're sharing the balls. Each player needs two in the side pocket and then one to finish. So that would lead to a pretty close game all the time. And so one variation that I have tried, and I think I do enjoy it, is to do alternating shots on the first hole. And if you recall my golden ball game, it's similar in the sense that each player takes a shot. So in other words, I have, for my version anyhow, I have alternating shots on the first pocket. In other words, there's no runoff. So there's no runoff on these first run out on these first 5 balls. Each player takes a shot, and the other player takes a shot, and vice versa. Now, what this leads to is it means that every shot you're taking on this, I'll call it the first half of the game, and this will be the second half of the game or the end game. On the first half, you're always going to have to consider where you let the ball lie, and you're always going to want to give your opponent a difficult shot. So you want to make your ball, and you want to leave a lie that gives your opponent a difficult shot. And as I've been playing this way, I realized really in this first half of the game there are two or three things you could be doing. Number one, if you have a shot, you want to make a ball. If you don't have a shot, what you want to do is you want to be setting up some balls for the future in either the two or the one. So that gives you something to do when you don't have a makeable shot. And a third thing you could do, of course, is if you have no makeable shot and you've already set up your balls here, you can play defensively and knock one of your opponent balls out of the way, um, however you want to sort of frustrate them. But when your opponent is working on the 5, you always want to leave a defensive lie and be conscious of what you're doing. Now, that that happens naturally when you have to take alternating shots. So now, what about after you complete your 5? The way I have it now is after you complete your 5th ball, then you transition into a run out scenario. So the end game, so the first half is alternating, and the end game would be a run out. So the way I've been playing it is once I make my 5th ball, that 5th ball unlocks the run out capability, and from then on I can run out. So I've been playing when you make the 5th ball, you could continue on immediately to these 2 balls and possibly to win the game. So it's kind of a half and half. It's half alternating and half of a run out. And what I found is that what happens is the alternating part of the game is quite easy to make those shots, but these side pockets, they really are difficult. And if you don't set them up, it kind of is hard to get these balls in the side pocket, during which point your opponent should be able to catch up. And it typically would lead to an end game where people are really getting down to the last 5, 3, 2, 1 balls to win the game. So that's the version I've been playing it. I'm fine calling it 521 Billtrum. I'm fine calling it American Billtrum. It's what I've been personally playing, and I think it does provide a few more activities for the player to do, as opposed to always trying to score. And it really does relieve the players from even keeping score, right? The game as you have it, like there are 6 holes to keep track of a score, and I'm not sure if you were marking the score on the whiteboard somehow over there, but yeah. So I think this scenario alleviates. I mean, you do have to keep score of really, you know, your score up to 5. You got to keep. So it would go 1 to 1, 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 2 to 3, that kind of thing. But once you've completed the first half, it's quite obvious, that you've made one or two balls in here. So from that point on, all you have to keep track of is, did I make two balls in here yet? And I'm on the third ball. So I think this scenario makes it, number one, easier for the players to keep score. Number two, easier for a spectator to observe what's going on. And this idea of marking what hole they're working on, that's really for the spectators. I don't think that the players necessarily need to move the markers along when they're playing, as long as they're kind of announcing the score and can remember what hole they're on, which I think will not be too difficult to do. So all right, yeah, that's my observations from observing your game, from playing it as you have it, and thinking about some ways to make it easier to keep score and a little more, how to say, I ultimately wanted to make it to where there's a way you could play defense and sort of slow down your opponent, and at the same time possibly catch up to your opponent. So you want to slow them down and have an ability to catch up, and not let not not like, for example, in the frame two that you posted, it really was a blowout, and it's really hard to imagine, when it's like 8-0 or 8-1. It's really hard to imagine that that player would be able to come back from that. And it seems like all they would be able to do is, if you get down to one hole, they might be able to frustrate you a little, but there's so many balls that eventually they're gonna lose. And while they're frustrating you and playing defensively, there's no way for them to really catch up from such a deficit. So I think these changes will make more exciting finishes. Ultimately, I think when it gets down to two or three balls, it's when it's kind of like anyone's game to win, and those obviously are more exciting finishes, I think. So, all right, Thornton, this is my analysis. This is the way I'm playing. I think it's a fine game, and I'm glad to share. I'm glad to share my thoughts with you, and I'll talk to you later, bud. Okay, bye.